YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. What are we doing today? We're not reviewing any airplane. It's amazing, but it is aircraft related and it is aviation related. So hopefully you guys will get a kick out of it. This is gonna be a review of my PPG experience to date. It's gonna be a compilation of an unbox video from Christmas Day, actually. So Merry Christmas next year or whenever, because it's already over and we appreciate you guys bearing with us. I am gonna say lots of things wrong. I apologize. It's because I'm still learning myself lots. So please have grace with me. The next clip you're gonna see is when I unbox the wing or the paraglider. And then the next part you're gonna see is actually the culmination of much of my training, up to and including my first flights and a few other flights, which is pretty cool, takeoffs and landings. And yes, the answer to your question is yes, I had 6 days and that was my full experience. One of the days was like complete miserable waste of time when I was trying to self-train for like a day just to get a little bit of extra experience. And that was a total waste of time. And then the second day was bad weather. And then I went to training for 5 days and I didn't know. And then I flew. So stay tuned. We're gonna go over all the details. Thanks, special thanks to our Patreons for supporting us the way you do. Much of our support comes from people buying things from the links in the video description below that's in this video, just like usual. And we really appreciate you guys doing that. We want to be here to bring you good content, good footage, and this is our largest investment to date by far and away on our YouTube channel. So we hope that you enjoy the experience and we hope that you get some no BS answers that you may have not gotten from other reviewers and people that like to make everything sunshine and rainbows, because we don't do that on Brian Phillips RC. We show you the uncut reality of the situation, and sometimes that means frustration, crashes, unhappiness. What else can I say about Dynam? Anyway, so stay tuned. It's coming up next. What?
If you want to hear your whole kind of long explanation
the long
about
spiel
training,
that the camera crew complained was so long that we had to put at the end, it's at the end.
You're welcome, guys.
So stay tuned for the unbox of the wing next. After that, we're gonna do some flights and then the elaborate explanation of every detail since my birth. It's maybe not quite that long, but we'll also show you the storage in the garage to date. And remember, we're still new on this. We're only what, like 2 weeks into this now?
Yeah, pretty much.
So the lifestyle continues. It's all about the lifestyle of aviation here on Brian Phillips RC, which includes tractors and leaf blowers. Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
And headphones. What else do we review that people give us trouble about?
Small chainsaws.
Chainsaws.
Hedge clippers.
Hedge clippers. Don't forget.
All of those things are super.
Yeah, they're super specific
really
to
important.
aviation.
Yes.
I'm just saying, listen, it is. So stay tuned. Coming up next. YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. We have a box. We're going to open it right now. What is this? What does this thing do? Is this so that I don't hit myself in the head with an airplane? I think that's it. Comes with some padding and then it goes on your melon like that, okay? I'm not gonna do it just quite yet. So we've been telling you there's some new things coming to Brian Phillips RC. And there are some new things coming to Brian Phillips RC. And one of them is in this box right here. So, as usual, hold on, shameless clip. Oh, that is an R cup. That's Rammy's. We're gonna open this thing. Many of you have heard me mention that we bought a bunch of land and we built a house on it. And then we started filming radio-controlled airplanes on our runway, which we built in front of the house. And then later we bought some more land so that we could have a runway. Well, this is step number 1 in getting to full-scale aircraft, okay? This is step number 1, numero uno. So for those of you that aren't privy to the law, Part 103, FAR Part 103, is part of the jurisdiction in the United States that allows for flying radio-controlled airplanes in the airspace. It also allows for ultralights. And so, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna, oh look, we got some stickers in here. You've probably connected the dots either through listening to me talk many times or by basically just being part of this channel for a long time. You know I wanna fly. But you also know that flying is a rich man's sport and we're not rich. we work hard for the money we do have and we spend it all. So what we have here is the next step. We're gonna add this to Brian Phillips RC. It is not gonna be RC at all. What is this? This is a bag. Why do I need a big bag like this? This bag is what I'm gonna use to put my parasail into, which is super exciting. Okay, what else do we have in here? This comes from Discover PPG. Also, they also have a website called Fly PPG. And I am going to formal training next week, as in not tomorrow, but the next day. I'm gonna be gone for a week. Don't worry, there's already footage in the can. It's ready to go. So we just have to get everything done. This is called a kiting harness. Holy crap, look at these clips. This is the clips that will hold my life in their hands. See this? There's a release here. See that? That's thick and strong. I'm sure I couldn't break it if I tried. So what's gonna happen is this is gonna be powered paragliding. And this must be the actual wing.
Must be.
Jeez, that box is heavy. So if you look right here, that is so cool. It comes in a backpack. I didn't know it came in a backpack. It also, once you open it, it must be harder to put away.
Pack back into that thing.
So yeah, so it's got a big heavy handle here. Now, if you're looking to get into flying, we are gonna show my progression from knowing basically what you can know by going through YouTube videos and calling a number of different companies that do this sort of thing and talking to a few people that you've met that do it and otherwise knowing nothing. So knowing nothing, you can legally fly this in certain airspaces without any license or permit in the United States. I don't think that it would be wise to do that. So, Adventure Paramotors, okay. So that is the brand that this company sells. There's lots of brands out there. I don't know enough to be able to say this brand is better than that brand. There's a nice big pocket in here. I'm just gonna show you the gear that I get, and then I'm gonna show you how it works, because there are a million different choices out there. And one of the biggest problems I had, a lot like radio-controlled airplanes, is that when you start, it is extremely hard to know what to get. You're like, ooh, I want this F-15 for my first plane. Yeah, you're not gonna do that.
No.
If you do that, you'll fail. You'll miserably fail. It will be a 15-second experience. It's gonna be worse than, okay, I can't continue with that elaboration. 15 seconds. What you need is something like this, okay? A Hawkeye, okay? Something like that. It's a very small motor, very small bay for batteries, very simple, very cheap, but super fun, wets your whistle, helps you to understand if you're gonna be able to do it, okay? And there's lots of aids to help make it easier to fly. And then, in a few years, you can be up to something like this, or you can start flying helicopters, and you can see the digression from, these are all expert helicopters, in my opinion, but these have more help. Even still, this one has more help. This one scares me still. This one scares me, this one doesn't, which is weird. And that's why I'm telling you, like, how would you know that this E180 is hard to fly compared to the E150? You wouldn't, is the key, until you had enough expertise or you had somebody that was willing to come alongside you and teach you something. So that's what we're doing now, is I'm getting ready to go to training. So why do I need a bag? Because once the parasail or the wing is open, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be harder to pack in here. Now I believe you can pack them in here anyway, because people will go up on the side of hills and they will use their harness to actually fly off of the hill. It's like slope soaring, except I'm attached to it and a living human being. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, look, we've got some shirts in here. Looks like we got a blue shirt. That's pretty sweet. Okay, cool. So this, of course, is what I paid for, everything I paid for. Now, some of you guys know that we work with a bunch of companies like Arrows. We've got a bunch of Arrows planes out here. I kind of feel bad for Horizon because we only have Arrows stuff out right now because we've just been doing. This one's Banggood. This is E-Sheen. And then over here, we've got an XPR plane, which is the Boeing 737. We've got a Horizon plane here. We got another Arrows. We got another E-Sheen.
Yep.
We got the helicopters. These are E-Sheen at the beginning and then Horizon at the back. So back when we started our journey into RC aviation, which to be honest with you was when I was a kid, I never actually flew anything more than just a coaxial little helicopter. You could get them for 20 or 30 bucks at the hardware store or at the, you know, at the malls they used to exist. You could buy these things and you could enjoy them on Christmas morning. It was awesome. And it's an informative experience for a young boy. But as a kid, I would have killed to have some of this stuff, like those little 400 millimeter warbirds. Are you kidding me? I would have killed to have something like that as a kid. So now that I'm a grown-up kid, a bigger kid, a more expensive kid, then I can do all these things that I wanted to do as a kid. But it's so crazy because my kids can have it, but now they have tablets, so they don't even need most of it. So anyway, here's the thing. What I'm getting at is it's very hard to go from 0 to 60. And somewhere between 0 and 60, you got to spend like 20 grand. So it's like, okay, I don't want to spend 20 grand. What if I don't like it? Well, there are ways to get around that. You can do a discovery flight. Like you can go to a place like this. You can spend a couple $100, not 20 grand. And you can get on and they will do a tandem flight where you're hooked onto them and they will actually fly you around. You can see if you like it. The other way you can do it is you can just do training and see if you like it. Now, in my case, the training was a few $1,000s. But what I was getting at when we walked you around the room, showed you different brands we work with, is that nowadays we don't have to buy all these planes because they send them to us for a review, which I know some of you guys like, are you kidding me? Yeah, that's the way it's been for years for us. When we started our extravaganza into RC stuff, we were paying for everything, 100% of it. And it was like, you can only do that for a couple of years before you literally go bankrupt. So the number of planes that we review, there is no way we could do it. And we make good money, okay? So I make good money. My wife stays at home with her kids and she loves them. So, and I love them too, but she takes care of them. But these planes, you know, when you're talking about $600-700 to get in the air on a plane, I mean, we can't do 10 of them in a month or 20 of them in a month. Just will never happen. So all the stuff you see me doing for PPG, it's 100% out my wallet into somebody else's wallet. There is no sponsorship, there is no endorsements, there's nothing. Because nobody wants to endorse a dude that doesn't know what he's doing, and that's just the way it is. So we'll see what happens in a few years. Okay, so I just wanted to go into that because some of you guys are gonna say, oh, you just got a free paraglider. No, I wish I got a free, believe me, I tried, it didn't work. If you try to leverage a YouTube channel for stuff that people know isn't gonna work, it doesn't usually work. E-bikes. Anyway, you see this here? I don't know what this is, but it looks like a string. What is it?
It's another bag.
Another bag?
Yeah, I don't know what the string is. I can't.
Looks like a string. And oh, it's a replacement string. Okay. So these are the strings that are actually going up to the top. And it looks like there is a manual. So a lot of this stuff is made overseas. Like all of it is pretty much made overseas because this stuff, I think it's Italian, most of it. So you can see they start with French, maybe?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
I think so.
But yeah, some of the stuff is made in France, some of it's made in Italy, some of it's made in other areas. But the idea is it's very inexpensive to get in the air compared to flying, say, an ultralight. And I check that by saying flying an ultralight could be cheaper, but it requires an airstrip, which we are gonna eventually have an airstrip right out here. You're gonna be able to see it right through the windows on this beautiful sunny Christmas morning. And in a few short years, we hope to have that in grass airstrip manner. So very short grass, very well kept, very smooth. But for now, we're gonna be doing this. And this you don't need a huge yard for. We could easily done it. If it weren't for the power lines, you could safely do it from the front. Now, we also have a lot of places to ditch if there's a problem. And okay, so we've got, what is this? So this is a 31 meter squared parasail or parasail. And what that does is that tells you how big how many square meters. So square meter would be like, square meter, 3 by 3 feet, roughly. Or exactly, I don't know. And then, oh, whoops. Looks like that's maybe a windsock in there.
Oh, cool.
Oh yes, that's awesome. Ooh, this is like high quality stuff. Look at this. This is like legit stuff. Look. This is not Chinese made, I don't think. So anyway, the whole idea is when you get into this sport, they have a very good track record of safety in the sport, but it's still life or death. You could actually injure yourself or kill yourself doing this. So when you see me doing this, if you do see me doing this a lot, then I just want to remind you that you are seriously taking your life in your own hands, just like when you get in the car.
Well, and while you're unpacking that, I think what you kind of started to say and then didn't finish, sometimes when people first get into RC, they're so overwhelmed with all of the terminology and things that, that you just don't
like
know.
ESCs and DCs.
That everybody expects you to know and just assumes that you know. And this was kind of the same for us. Like,
it's overwhelming.
Where do we even start? How do you make decisions on very expensive things?
Well, and we wanted to start with new. We didn't want to start with used. You can buy used gear and you can get it a lot cheaper. The trouble is, the point of entry for us was, since it is life or death, if you make the wrong decision, you could literally kill yourself.
Yeah.
I can't afford to kill myself. I got 4 kids and a wife that needs me to be alive. So, even though she'd like to kill me sometimes. So anyway, if you're lucky. No, I'm just kidding. Don't call for help. But what I am saying is, at the end of the day, we needed to stack the odds in our favor. Okay, still terrible things happen, but that's obviously not our plan. And at the end of the day, this is one of the safest ways to get in the air. I literally have a parachute strapped onto me, and then I'll very likely have a reserve chute as well. I don't have the reserve chute yet, but we'll have a reserve chute that will also be able to be thrown. That's something we go over in training. I mean, it's 7-day training. I'm only doing it for 5, but still, it's 7-day training. And most of the companies that offer training are going to be 7 to 10 days. So what I did to go from 0 to where we are now, which is not very far into it, was I called a ton of places. I talked to a ton of people, and I talked to the people that sell the stuff. And I said, okay, give me the dirt on this guy. Then I called that guy and I said, give me the dirt on this guy. Then I called the next guy and I said, give me the dirt on these 2 guys. And then I called the next guy and said, give me the dirt on these 3 guys. And then I called the next guy and I said, give me the dirt on these 4 guys. And what happened was I started to figure out who has better reputations in the community. Because it's not a huge community. There's not like millions of people that do this. Just like RC aviation. You have to remember, the size of the community that does something is usually where the legal clout, comes from. The weight. Now, unless you have a legislator that you know and you're buddies with and they start flying with you, or maybe they're into aviation, that's another way to get clout. Another way to get clout is to have lots of money and support legislators and to support lobbyists and to support. So for those of you that don't know how the real world works like this. If you want to protect your ability to do fun things that are otherwise somewhat dangerous, could cause problems, the best way to do it is to try not to do stupid things if you can avoid it. And if you are going to do stupid things, don't film it, which is tough for a YouTuber, because that's what people like to see. Or have lots of money and be willing to give it away to get what you want. And that's the way the real world works. It's not fair, it's not even, it's not the way it should be, it's not right, just whatever you want to say. But that's the way it is. So if you don't like that, then, try to change the world. Good for you. But in reality, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start flying, enjoy it, and then just work my best to help the image of the different things that I get into. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be some prude that thinks what you're doing is terrible. I mean, this is a pretty wholesome thing after all. Like, people don't get hurt, at least not other people, generally speaking. It'd be very rare for other people to get hurt in this hobby. I mean, you crash into their house, it'd not be good. You crash into somebody's business, it'd not be good. But the thing is, at the end of the day, this is pretty much a risk on your own life. That's part of the reason why FAR 103, which by the way, you can read FAR Part 103 if you want. And you can start learning about this if you want. We read the entire preamble before we realized it was a preamble, which basically is the rationale behind a rule. And then if you read the entire rule, then it will tell you what the rules are. And
it was super entertaining reading.
It was.
But it was actually really interesting, and it was helpful for both of us.
But don't read it before bedtime.
No.
because you won't get very far. Okay, so Brian Phillips' RC videos are long. That's because I talk a lot, okay? So part of the reason I talk a lot is because that's how I teach other people. So if you look at all this stuff, you're like, oh my goodness, you're gonna jump in the air with that thing attached to you and fly around. Yes, I am. Oh, don't forget the 25 horsepower engine on there. There's also gonna be that, okay? So you see all these things, all these knots and ties and strings and stitches and everything? I hope I don't break any of it.
You're gonna have to learn how to tie knots better.
No, I'm not gonna be tying the knots. See, that's the beauty of this. Okay, so the way this works is there are strings that go to one side of the wing and strings that go to the other side of the wing, and they're labeled A, B, C, D, E, I think. But anyway, then there's red ones on the front. They're called the A lines, and those are what you pull. And then there's a magnetic attachment point where you can let go of it, and then you can shift your body weight, put your leg over the other leg, or you can lean, and then that will turn you as well. So what you're doing is you're using a pendulum effect to actually control where you're turning. So if you imagine a 2-channel plane, or 3-channel plane where you got a throttle and you've got a rudder, and you've got, you know, a regular wing, you've got an elevator, okay? So you have an elevator. In our case, the elevator is throttle. So you give throttle and you go up. It pushes you like this, and then you go up and you climb and you climb and you climb. And when you let go of the throttle, you pendulum back to neutral. And depending on how heavy and how fast you want to go, you can brake, and that will change the shape of the wing, and you can do different things. There's also a speed brake, I believe. I'm not sure how all that works, but it shifts your body weight a little bit. And so then that makes you go a little bit quicker because you get in front of the center of gravity or you get aft of center of gravity, because the wing is like the length of the airplane. And if you shift yourself forward, I believe you go faster. And if you shift yourself back, then you can stall the wing. You can actually take this wing, it inflates and it acts just like a regular wing on an aircraft, but it's full of air, which is strange to me, but still, it's the way it is. So at the end of the day, you've got control of this thing, okay? So here, I'll show you the magnet, if I can find the magnetic attachment. There it is. There, see how strong that is?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So these are the A-line. This is the brakes. And then this is a hooking point, I believe. Oh no, this is the hooking point.
Okay.
No. Oh, fast, neutral, slow. See? So you can make adjustments. Now remember, when you're on a parasail or a paraglider, you are flying, notwithstanding a motor. And that's what I plan to do for as long as I can before I go to training. So I have to step into a harness like this. And I think I might have that, yeah, I think this is the right way. And so that harness will be on my body, and that will attach me to the actual paraglider, okay? And it becomes powered paragliding when you put a motor on your back, and then the motor allows you to control your ascent rather than waiting for Mother Nature to provide lift through wind or wind going up the side of the hill and having some upward motion, okay? I want to move that over just in case we got some coffee out this morning. Okay, so that is a huge, big band, okay? So now forgive the messiness in this application because I'm still learning all this stuff, so when we bring you stuff early on, it's probably a little bit more clunky than even the average Brian Phillips RC video. But I want you guys to know that we really appreciate you. We're trying to give somebody help that needs it. And for a lot of you that are more experienced paramotors or paragliders, you're gonna think, geez, this guy knows nothing. Exactly, that's the point. That's why we're doing this. Because every time we talk to an experienced paraglider, we find ourselves ending in the same spot, which is very confused, not knowing what the heck we're thinking about. And then it's so easy to just say, you know what? There's too high a level. You know, like the entry point is too high. I'm not even gonna try. I'm just gonna go on with my life and not fly. Okay, that's one way of approaching life. But the other way of approaching life is to go in like crazy and just say, I am going to keep fighting until I get where I want to go. And that's what I've done for my entire life. Just ask my wife. If I set my mind to something, it happens.
It's going to happen.
So we talk about things before I actually get serious about it. Because if I don't have her blessing, then it's not going to happen. Okay, so you see this? By the way, let's show them up close. See this stuff?
It is.
It's very thin.
Yeah, it is.
But then extremely strong edges. Very flexible. It's like a nylon. It's probably not nylon, but it's close. It's good enough for what we're doing. And then if you look, as I pull, it looks exactly like a kite. If you've ever had a performance kite, this is exactly the material that you would expect to see. Pause. Okay, so anyway, we've got this thing spread out. The first step for me is gonna be to figure out how to get this harness on. Okay, so harnesses are weird. I've worn harnesses at work a few times because when you get over 4 feet, OSHA requires you to be tied off in a lot of facilities depending on how you're using. I believe that's the way this goes. And then of course there's gonna be some like very significant adjustments because these go through your legs. And so like this thing releases and that's gonna go like this and around. But obviously I'm not adjusted yet, okay? So that's one of the first types of things that you're gonna figure out that you don't know how to do, okay? So once you figure out how to do that, then you can get strapped in like that and you can get this harness where it needs to be and then you're good to go. So I'm gonna play with that for a minute and then I'll show you what I adjusted, okay? Okay, so this is what it looks like when it's not properly adjusted. Okay, so I'm gonna put my helmet on just to show you. This is like the minimum equipment that I'm gonna be running with. And you can buy a super expensive helmet or you can buy something that's cheaper. And for me right now, this is what I'm gonna work with because it's inexpensive. And when I get ready to figure out kind of how my hearing protection works out, because you're gonna have a 25 horsepower engine like right there in like a couple of days. So I'm gonna probably have to figure out a different helmet. So I said, let's spend 40 bucks and just get something there so that if I get pulled into a tree or something, I won't die or be brain dead. So basically my wife helped me to adjust straps here to get the slack out of this. And you can reach them all when you're on. And then I had to go around like this. This is a super good public look right here. So there are clips that you can undo here. And then this is all the way out for me. Okay, because when you're a big person, all this equipment is made for like really small people, okay? But just to show you, these both unclip. They drop below your legs like that, just like a regular safety harness would. And I think I might need a little extra room somewhere. And I don't know if it comes from maybe doing this to buy a little extra slack, because I think these straps, these wide straps, are what you're actually gonna sit your butt on. So if you're putting this on for the first time and you put them in front of your torso, then that's wrong. It will reach, but it's gonna be wrong. Okay, then this unhooks. Let's show the people. This is heavy, heavy duty stuff. So this and this together, like that, releases, okay? So you can do it without pressing, but if you only do one, it won't work. If you only do one, it won't work, so you have to do both at the same time. It's not hard to do, but it definitely takes a little bit of practice. And also, any of these wide bands are gonna help to dissipate the load on your body, so it hopefully won't hurt. Heavier you are, the more impact on your body. So always a good reason to not be as heavy as me. Anyway, we're gonna get strapped up real quick and we'll be right back. Okay, so moral of the story is basically there's a lot of stuff that hooks you in. I think that this might be just a touch too small. So we may have to end up resizing that. But when you're all said and done, then this stuff, you're gonna walk outside and you're basically gonna have these things like this. Currently, they're attached together right here, okay? See that? There we go. Okay, so this is one side and this is the other side, okay? Okay, so basically this label is gonna have to come off. This is how they label it from the factory. So that's gonna get peeled out of there and we'll keep that for safekeeping. And then when you go outside, you're gonna basically have two of these with you. And that's the way you keep those things separate. And there is one clip-in point. This is not it. Is that it? That's it. That's it, I believe that's it. But I'm not 100% sure, and so that's one of those things you want to definitely check on. So the clip-in points go something like this: release, in, and clipped, okay? Now I need to verify, I don't think that's right. This is probably it, because it's way thicker. So we're gonna basically look at how the manual suggests that this is clipped in, and then when you walk outside, you can figure out where stuff goes. And the idea is, the initial and very first step of doing paramotoring is to do paragliding, because you have to kite, meaning you have to set this wing up so it's deflated on the ground, and you have to pull into the wind or pull and run, and then it'll go up above you just like a kite would if you were flying a kite. You have to get that above your head and then spin so you can go forward, or if the wind is blowing, you can do a reverse lift, I think, but I don't know enough about it yet. I'm still learning. But this super small thing is gonna get really big, really, really big, and then that's gonna lift you off the ground. So you wanna be super careful how you do that and where you do that. And you see how this is all organized nicely and packed nicely. And by the way, there are ribs in here. See this? There's a rib right there. It's like a flexible thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so now that you have seen kind of the quick and dirty, I don't know if anything we do is quick, but now that you've seen the rough idea, our hope is to show you at least one clip of kiting at some point. I don't know if that's gonna be now, because I kind of need to do a little practice before I put it on camera. Putting this thing on and off is not gonna be that big a deal. I'll show you just how quick you can take it off, and it's not hard at all. Obviously, you can get this stuff off real easy. It looks terrible when you see it in a bundle on the ground, but really it's quite easy to take on and off. It's kind of not so easy to adjust, okay? So it looks like it's gonna be hard to put on and off, but it's like putting on a jacket, and then you have to reach through your legs, and you can kind of take your, like for me, I got my left hand, left butt cheek, just bring it around, clip it in, and so then you just bring this down and clip it. And that's why I tend to think that maybe this one's a little bit big. You leave this open first, makes it easier. So then you reach under here, and you see how it's walking away from me when I do that? That's because it will pull away when your butt moves back. Okay, and then you clip in, and it makes all the fabric in your crotch stick out like you've got some huge thing going there. But it's just fabric, I promise. Right, camera crew? So that's why I think my harness might be just a touch too small on the torso length, because I think these things are supposed to be here, not here, but it may not matter. So anyway, that's how quick it was putting it on and taking it back off. When I saw it in the bag, I'm like, oh goodness gracious. This just reminds.
Once it's adjusted,
once it's
adjusted. Not so bad.
So, and there's this adjustment here. So that would bring this down. So I'll probably have to get a little bit of help during training just to get that adjusted properly. But my next step is kiting, and we'll try to give you guys some clips of that and thoughts about it. But in the meantime, if you're wondering what's going on and what this next big thing is that we've been talking about, this is kind of it. And we're gonna try to bring you along from 0 to full speed where we're up and flying. Now, as far as dangerous aerobatic moves and doing crazy things in the air and all that stuff, there's plenty of footage out there for you to watch people trying to kill themselves. That's not what I'm about right here and right now. Maybe after I get skilled enough to do it safely and I start working through, the idea is the margins for safety are gonna come from experience in dealing with bad situations, and then practice just in general. So for here, it's kind of like flying these radar controlled airplanes. It looks really scary and hard, and it really is hard at the beginning. Very hard at the beginning. I always forget that, and then like last night, we had a gift exchange. And so I white elephanted 2 small helicopters that we had, because we have a number of helicopters. And my uncle got one. And if you're watching, Don, thank you. That was cool to be able to teach you a little bit about it, but it just reminded me you know, I take for granted that I know these things. And so when somebody asks me a specific question, I can walk them through from, you know, right where they are. I can figure out where they are, and then I can diagnose what they need and then work through. Well, that's what's so tough about this is when you start from nothing, you really have a lot to learn. And that's what we're gonna try to do on this channel. So for those of you who are watching this and you're like, this is so boring, that's because you're not trying to do it. And if you're not trying to do it, it probably will be terribly boring, because we're gonna go through this step by step. And then for those of you that wanna know how to get in, you can follow along with my experience. Now, I'm not saying your experience will be exactly the same, or you're gonna, you know, have as much money to work with, or you're gonna have less money or more money than we do to work with. You're gonna have more time or less time than I do to work with. The biggest constraint we have is time. And for you, the biggest constraint may be money, or it may be real estate to fly from, or it may be regulations in your local jurisdiction, or it might be, you know, an airport is right across the street, or whatever it happens to be. So we're gonna help you guys see it from our perspective, and I know that you'll be able to glean what you need to glean from this short series. And we're gonna, of course, mix this stuff in with what we love, and that is radio controlled RC, fixed wing predominantly, occasionally helicopters, quads, some ground gear as well when it comes along. And we're gonna bring you guys along for the ride. So if you wanna help support our channel and support our efforts to do crazy things like this and bring you new and exciting content, we hope it's exciting. This one's probably not very exciting. Then what we ask you to do is like the video at the bare minimum. If you watch a video, you get even one little teeny tiny thing out of it and you hated the rest of it, just give us a like anyway. It helps us a lot. We do long format videos here on YouTube, which is generally for teaching people how to do things, and YouTube does not like that. They want entertainers. They want people that come on here and get wows. They want people that do stupid things. They get people to say wow and like tell all their friends, like, look at this idiot. We try not to do that. I mean, it happens naturally, but we don't go out of our way to be shock and awe and like huge entertainment value. It's more about trying to teach people. So you'll be helping us to not be penalized as bad as YouTube would like us to be penalized, because how-to videos don't get the traction that how not to videos get. So give us a like. Also, definitely subscribe if you're not. If you like the content, obviously you can always just skip a video, click the bell for notifications. And then the last and best thing you can do, if you really wanna help support us, when you see a beautiful plane you like, buy it from the links in the video description. Obviously, at some point in our time with paragliding stuff, we may have some links that we'll ask you to follow if you're gonna buy things to support us in that way. Because then what happens is we get small commissions from companies that we work with, and then you don't have to pay them. You pay the regular price, we get a small commission on the sale because they believe that we directed you to their website, which is true. So that's the way we make money to help support this. The other way we do it is through Patreon. So special thanks to our Patreons. You're making a difference. It's small right now, but you're making a difference. So we really appreciate you guys, seriously. Then PayPal, people give gifts one time or the other time, or, you know, like, hey, I bought a plane, but it was at the local hobby shop, but you kind of directed me there, so I feel bad, so I'm gonna give you some money, which I think is weird. You don't ever have to feel bad in that way, guys. Just buy planes, get flying, love it like we do, and that will be good enough for us. But if you wanna support us still, it's always available. And we did that because people were asking for years. So we wanted to open that up for people that need an outlet. And then, of course, the last way you can do it is just by telling people to watch our videos. And when you hear about somebody that's enthusiastic about this hobby or that hobby, bring them here to Brian Phillips RC, and we hope to bring them to the next step. So thanks a lot for watching. Merry Christmas. We're celebrating in about 5 minutes. So we're super excited to do that. Our kids are gonna have a great time. And by the way, from our kids, our family, the Phillips family, we really appreciate you guys watching. There's so much more to come. Nothing's gonna stop with the RC fixed wing, in case there was even a doubt about it. This is just gonna get added to the pile of things that my wife gets to help me with, and she's super excited. Come back for more. Okay, YouTube, we're outside. You'll note that the sun is way over there instead of way up there when we started. That's because kids had to open Christmas presents and other things. But yeah, so we've got this thing. I've been running back and forth looking like a complete fool for most of the day. And of course, the one day I need wind, it's dead calm. So evidently kiting is easier if it's windy. So every time I turn around, I have to do this and get the wing pointed into the wind. Of course, there is no wind, so I just point it this way. And then I walk out the lines. And then I'm clipped in here. Let's show them where I'm clipped in here. You'll note that everything looks like a tangly mess, right? That's because it kind of is, okay? But watch this. Go back over there. Let's hope this works, guys. I don't even know all the right moves to make, but don't worry, I won't fly away. There's no motor on here. I only have a jet engine. See? Okay, so we're gonna try again. So that thing is huge, and when it's dead calm, you're putting 100% of the power in to get that thing in the air. And I don't even have a motor on the back. So that's not kiting. Kiting is where you get it up there and you're controlling it by using the brakes, the two different types of brakes. These ones attach very on the edge like this, and it's like a small adjustment. Then these ones, you can see where they go. It pulls the whole side of the wing down, okay? And I'm twisted because I launched in a different direction than I normally would turn the other way. So I need to figure out which direction I wanted to turn first. But I said, wow, I've got it up there pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and go with it. But it's really satisfying when that thing gets filled up and it starts pulling on you. It's really cool to think about it. And like over in the bowl, you don't wanna launch and then end up in the trees. And then over here, I don't wanna launch and end up in this, you know, power lines and things like that. But once I get to being skilled enough, then I should be able to get off the ground, and then I can control my turns and control the ascent because I have a paramotor, which is the fan. But anyway, if you're afraid of looking like an idiot, then don't do this sport, because I don't know if there is a way to not look like a moron when you're practicing. But if there is a way, somebody please leave it in the comments below, because as with many skills that take effort to learn, there's no exception to this one. You can end up looking like an idiot while you're practicing, especially when it's like small like this. So anyway, guys, the whole reason that we have this film put together today, and doing that was even wrong because you'll see that the paraglider's backward now, okay? So that's the biggest problem I've had so far as I've been learning, is that every time I run up and down the driveway, I'm just kind of working my way back and forth, then the parachute gets turned inside out. And so you see this here? This is twisted now, so that's not acceptable either. So I have to basically flip this around. And you get to start learning about what all this stuff means and whether it's tight and whether, you know, like I want the red lines exposed. So you figure out real quick that you can, that won't ever be on the top because it's actually upside down. So I would have to take this and flip it over like that. I'd have to flip this side all the way over to that side, and then I'd be able to hook back in and I could pull it toward the house. But it's just a lot of work to do that right now. And as you learn, there's a lot of steps in the middle between somebody like me that knows nothing and somebody that's going to be training me next week. So I feel bad for that guy. Anyway, we appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for staying tuned. So much more to come. And yes, in a helmet, I know it's a pretty irresistible look. So if you copy, good for you. Okay, so this is my first kiting at training. It's a Monday afternoon.
There you go. Push forward.
So this is basically what we did for the first 2 full days plus.
Yep, step
and
to the right,
learning to kite is hard.
Yep, there you go. Keep pushing,
you can see how that
pushing.
wing just about collapsed on us. The
Yep,
trainer's
don't
talking in the
chase it. Push
background. We
forward
didn't
and
want to take
There you go.
Teresa's
There you
voice
go.
out
Good
because
job.
she's
Good
giving
save.
me instructions and gives you an
Don't
idea of
stare
what
at
to
it all the
expect.
time. Look back
This is the
forward,
hardest
keep up
part
at
of
it.
paragliding, is learning how to kite, and then later you mix everything else in. So I'm going to voice
Whenever you're
over
nice and
for part
centered,
of this.
spin
Megan
your
is also
right,
mic'd
center
up for
up,
this.
tighter to the
So
ground.
we're just
Step
kind of
left,
watching
right,
it
left.
together,
There you go.
and I'm
Good job.
elaborating verbally.
Yep.
You can
Hold
also
both
see on the
brakes.
trailing edge,
Kick
that's what
arm
happens
down.
when you
Left arm
brake.
harder.
The
Left
idea
arm.
is to
There
stay
you
under
go.
the center
Left
of the
arm,
wing.
left
It's much
arm.
harder than it looks. So this is a forward launch.
Line going on first toe.
We trained more in reverse launch configuration than we did in forward. There is a moment, you see how I'm kind of stepping back? It gets so strong. That's a toe launch, so now they're pulling me up in the air, and yes, it does feel like you're going to fall out, but you don't. Surprisingly enough, I lived. This is pretty cool though, because you go up and you actually are way up there. And it's not like, you know, you're doing it in a vacuum. It is the real world environment. And by the way, yes, it was sleeting on me when that was happening.
The weather wasn't that good.
It was terrible that day, yeah.
This is where our 4-year-old said, look, Dad's a kite.
But yeah, this is the 31 meter wing that I'm using and what you saw in the unbox. And it looks like just a parachuter, you know, it's funny.
And just in your kiting harness, right?
Yep, and then you can see him off in the field there. That's Mike running the equipment. It's a winch. And you see the landing was just like a whole huge nothing.
Yeah.
So very cool. So this is a reverse launch, and I have that string, or not string, but the cable is going off to my right side. It was very scary. I had one time where I got sucked into the yard doing this.
Hands up!
And that was the last one we did. Because what happens is when you get it set up on end, it can basically like pull a 700-pound guy, you know.
It looks intense.
It is very intense. It goes so fast. And it's like, you go way up there.
Yeah.
I don't even know how high I was, but it felt like it was forever up. So, and by the way, Teresa's filming, so thank you, Teresa, if you're listening or watching this video. So this is a first solo flight. Look how long it takes me to get that wing in the right position. I'm reverse launching. That means the wind was above 6 miles an hour, like 6 to 10 miles an hour. Below that, you do a forward launch. Okay, so I'm going forward now, and look at it going over to the right. They're probably saying, go right, Brian.
Kite your wing.
Excuse me. So as you can see, I'm kind of trying to fight it. And then you basically get into the throttle, and they're calling out all this information. You can hear it in the background.
Go, go, go.
It's right up in your ear, and there is no getting away from it.
Run it out.
There it is,
Run
guys.
it out.
I'm in the air. See how much I'm oscillating? I survived. Yep, that's the end of the first flight. I never wanted to see the ground more than I did at this moment of time. It was the most scary flight ever, and I'm going to talk about it more at the end. But I did live.
And you had a good landing.
And I had a good landing. Landings actually are quite easy. So this is the second flight. This is the reason why I'm still doing it right now. Was because the second through 9th flights went swimmingly. I fixed a couple of different problems. I actually made a list of my concerns. You can hear Mike in the radio here too, just kind of giving some input to me. The biggest thing is just knowing when to actually pick up your feet, because you're supposed to kind of run it out, like you just keep running until you're in the air. I had a hard time with that because I had to brake to actually get up in the air like that, and look how beautiful that sky is. It is hard to explain just how amazing it is once you're up there and you didn't have a scary flight. This was an enjoyable, profitable experience. It was
doing good.
Training is incredible. It is. If you can self-train, you are like a miracle worker. There are so many things you have to get right.
Nice. All the way, all the way. Good job. Brian getting ready to take
So
his
third launch,
flight.
reverse launch now because the wind was picking up. And what you don't see is that it's very windy aloft too. I tried to kind of throw the kite forward. So I don't know if this one failed. Did I fail on this one? You didn't put the failures.
Kite your wing.
So we have,
Go.
you can see the trailing edge get pulled down. It almost looks like a flap. It's like imagine an aileron that only goes down. That's what you're doing. You're pulling the trailing edge of the wing is how you control it with the brake toggles.
Stay full throttle, climb out.
It was so beautiful that day. It was so cool.
Brian coming in, flight.
But believe it or not, guys, you can feel the railroad tracks when you fly over them 600-700 feet up. It's incredible. It's so weird. As you can see, the landings are not really a huge issue. That's actually an advanced technique. I just didn't know I was doing it. It's called snaking. There's the spectators. There's always people around, which is weird when you're doing this. And as a new pilot, it's kind of nerve-wracking having people close, even though they know where they can stand safely. I about bit it though. But you're always at the mercy of the wind too. Now, this guy that I'm about to land on top of, that was a kind of a bystander, and he kept talking to us all throughout the training. He was a super nice guy, and I was yelling at him like, hey, do you want a haircut there? He was fun to be around though.
Brian getting ready.
You can see in the
Flight
backdrop,
is
that's where we were
first
training, in
forward.
that building back there.
So this is your first forward launch
There
then?
you go. There you go.
Yeah, well,
Get under center. Under center.
yeah, we tried, I had a bunch of Bosch
There you go.
forward launches on my first set. We ultimately ended up reverse launching by the time we got him here. I did 8 flights this day. And that was from 3 p.m. till when it got dark, which was like 5:30ish. See, she didn't catch all of them because
Second forward.
it's just like by then it's just kind of a foregone conclusion to get every single video. It's a lot of the same stuff, but it's an incredible experience when you start feeling like, hey, I can do this. Because it is like a lot of things that happen all at once within the course of about 30 seconds. And if you don't do it right, it doesn't happen.
Nice and wide, stand up good and straight. Nice.
I think this might have been our last video, right?
Go when you're ready. Remember, hold the maze till that wing.
And I think Teresa was on.
Oh, and that's a forward launch too.
Push
Yeah.
up your right a little bit. Push forward. Push
So you
forward.
hear Teresa in the
throttle.
background. Hopefully we're not
Nice
talking
and
over you.
smooth. More throttle.
But that's what I'm hearing.
A little bit of left brake pressure.
And they
Put yourself
keep
back in the wind.
in contact with you the
Left
whole
brake.
time.
Yep. Keep turning. Keep turning. There you go.
I
Now
can
more
press a
throttle.
button to talk, but we don't generally take our hands
There
off
you
the
go.
toggles, which are
On
the
a full
brakes.
throttle. Lean back.
Because like
big step.
that's so scary to do when you're first starting.
Good job.
So we're just going to show you some of the gear. This is a backpack that came as part of my kit, and I got actually 3 bags, and this is one of the bags. I also got a windsock, a short windsock, which we showed later. Everything that I have for this entire paramotor and paraglider, which is a powered paraglider or PPG, is basically this bag facilitates. This is the training documentation. I have a sticky note because I have to torque the bolts on my prop because we took it apart to bring it home in our Traverse, along with all my overnight stuff for an entire week away from home. And I had a lot of stuff, a lot of cold weather gear, a lot of coats. I bring like probably 6 coats because I didn't know what we were going to be doing. This is December in Illinois, and we live in Iowa, so it's actually, you know, 3.5 hour drive for us where we ended up doing our training. But inside of here, I've got some AMSOIL. I've got all my conversions. I know how to figure out a 40-to-1 ratio, which is super easy. I basically multiply however many gallons of gasoline that I purchased. Premium gasoline is what I'm going to use. You can use just anything they prefer without ethanol, which is pretty standard for a 2-stroke engine. And in this case, I multiply by, I take the number of gallons divided by 0.3125. And then that tells me how many ounces. So I have a cup, you know, from like the kids' medicine, and I just figured out what 1 ounce would be and marked it. And I got a couple of paper towels and gloves. And this is here so that I know that I have what I need, because if you would run yourself out of fuel, you could actually refill. And then I have a small LiPo charger, which, as you know, I have lots of chargers. So I just set one up in a package, and I made it so that I could charge both off of AC and off of DC, meaning I can plug it into my car battery when running, because 14.6 is gonna exceed the 14 volt necessity to charge. You can charge a 3S on 12.6 volts or 12 volts, whatever your car sits at idle. Okay, and there's nothing else in here except for I have a spare prop. I purchased a spare prop when I bought everything. And part of the reason I'm showing you what I bought is just because there is a lot of things that you can buy and there's a lot of things that you cannot buy. It just depends on what you need to do. In my case, I bought another E-prop. I have a Helix prop installed currently. This is an E-prop, so it's just the same setup. It just happens to be an E-prop, okay? So it's carbon fiber. It's beautiful. I'm not gonna unwrap it here, but if you see an E-prop on my Paramotor, it's probably because I crashed or screwed up or had a really rough landing. And so that's the rationale behind everything that I've done in this sport, is basically get myself in a position to be able to fly on demand when I want to and when the opportunity arises. Because out of 365 days in the year, I'm thinking that realistically, I'm gonna get opportunities to fly maybe 20 times, maybe 25, 30 times on a really good year. And that's not because of weather, that's because of my schedule plus weather plus YouTube production. So part of the reason we're going into such detail is because I'm gonna get a million questions and I don't wanna answer them on text messages back and forth. So I've got some hearing protection, and this is meslazine, I think. And it's Dramamine. So more about that later, but I have that in here because if you get motion sick and you're gonna do paragliding, when you're very new, it's hard to not induce a certain level of oscillation. And if it's really bad, my first flight was terrible. My first solo was terrible. It was very scary. And one of the biggest issues I had was my throttle, and I'll show you that later, wasn't working great. And also I was killing the engine because there's a kill switch that I was bumping into on one of the brake toggles. And so in combination with that, lack of skill, lack of experience, and just general conditions and the way the rig was set up, I got myself into a really nasty oscillation for pretty much the whole flight, and then both forward and backward and left and right. And so what that caused was for me to get sick. In addition to, I didn't puke, thank God, but I was on the verge of, when I landed, I needed probably 2 hours before I was feeling good again. So if I would have taken this, I would have avoided that. And this was like $5.50. So it can cause drowsiness. It's just like Dramamine, 25 milligrams of whatever the active ingredient is. And it's, that's actually the generic of it. So it's called meslazine, and it's HCI. So that's 25 milligrams. Anyway, I took that the second day that I did fly. And by the way, start to finish, my training at home was a complete waste of time. I literally did everything wrong, and you'll see that in the video if you stay tuned. That's part of the unbox for the wing. I didn't have anything set up right, with the exception of my harness was close. Going through training for this sport, I would say that the industry as a whole kind of assumes that you're gonna do training. If you think you're gonna fly PPG without training, you are insane, because it is incredibly challenging to do. Launching a wing, and then kiting a wing and being able to reverse and not get things screwed up, and doing it just generally right is much harder than I anticipated, but definitely doable. And when I say with the right help, it's not hard, it's just hard to put it all together in the right order. And there is a lot to do. So if you think of the skill it is required for flying a performance kite, it's like that, except like on crack and also on steroids at the same time. And it's way bigger and you can get killed doing it. So please seriously get training. If you're gonna do PPG, you need it. If you're thinking, hey, I'm gonna save $2,000 or I'm gonna save $3,000 or whatever training course, there's a lot of them around the country. In the United States at least, I can tell you, I would say that it's reasonable to assume you're gonna spend between $15,000 and $20,000 to be from nothing to brand new equipment doing paragliding, powered paragliding in the United States right now in 2022. Of course, my training was in 2021 because I did it right at the tail end of the year. This also came in the bag. This is some spare string, which is Kevlar, and then it's encased in a cotton, so it's actually extremely strong. That little line will hold like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And there's gotta be like 40 or 50 of them on my parachute, which is not a parachute, it's called a wing, because it is a wing. It is designed to fly forward. It is not designed to arrest motion like a regular wing. So also think about seriously considering a backup parachute or a reserve chute that you can throw. You'll practice it in your training, even if you don't buy one. Some people fly without a reserve chute. I am currently running without a reserve chute. Some of you will beat me up for that, but the reality is I know my skill level enough to understand that if I need it, I won't be able to get to it in time. So until I can develop skills more, or I go to higher altitudes, or I start doing more risky behaviors, for now, the extra $1,000 or whatever it's gonna cost for that feature is just not gonna happen. It also does add a layer of complexity to overall flight. It takes up room, it adds weight. So there's a risk and reward to everything you're doing in this sport, and there's literally a DVD called Risk and Reward that you'll probably watch in your training. It's very good, actually. But everything I'm saying here is purely informational. It's not meant to be training, and I wanna make sure you guys understand that. With PPG, it isn't like life or death every time you do something, okay? So I don't want you guys to misunderstand what I'm saying, but it's kind of like getting in a car and driving. you know, sure, you're statistically, the likelihood of dying in a car when you get in a car is very low, but it's not zero. And I mean, the same is true every time you sit on the toilet. You know, you could die on the toilet if the conditions are right, okay? But most people don't die when they sit on the toilet. So just understand that living carries a certain risk of dying. In fact, it's 100% risk because everybody watching this video will die eventually of something. Hopefully it's old age and everybody was happy and you had a chance to say goodbye to your family. But the reality is when you do PPG, you do need to, you know, look at your risk versus your rewards. So again, in my normal fashion, I'm just gonna bounce around like a bouncy ball. Inside of here, we have some extra gas tube. And this is the vented gas cap. Currently I have a cap on there that has no vent, and that's a transportation cap. So, because I transport it home. And then of course I've got the Adventurer paramotors, paperwork, and then I got a tool like this that goes with this thing here, and you can adjust the belt. That sticks into here. And then there's also another Allen wrench. It's a modified Allen wrench. I have some extra foot pieces, I believe it's what it's called, because I got an additional fixture on the bottom that's gonna help keep the prop off the ground if I hit the ground on launch or on landing. I have not hit the prop, haven't had any problems yet. Thank God for that. But I think it's reasonable to assume I will eventually, in my training process, which has now become away from the formal environment. Now I'm gonna get somebody that's very experienced to work with me locally until such a time as I can go back and take my USPA, I believe it's USPPA level 2 course. Excuse me, it's not a level 2 course, but level 2 testing for flight testing. I've already done the first part, the first requirement, so I passed both book tests, and they actually pay you to finish the second level because they wanna have better pilots. So it's just something that the community does. There's dues, I believe it's like $35 or something like that per year, and it's covered as part of my training in this case. So anyway, so this is a big deal. Think about it. If you get motion sick, if you go to an amusement park, and as a kid, I used to be able to ride all the rides except for the silly silo, which was this thing that spun around and the floor would drop out, and it was like, you know, it's like where everybody went to puke. It was gross. I couldn't do that one ever, even as a kid. But as a kid, we used to spin around on this tar bar stools. I remembered it vividly. It was just one of these things we did as a kid. And it never made me feel sick to my stomach. But as an adult, I'm really lame and boring. And so when I go to the amusement park, what was it, the first time we went with all of our kids together?
No,
I ended up having to, they had to bring the meat wagon out to meet me and take me up front where I could purchase my overpriced Dramamine, which was like, what, $12 instead of being like $1.99 at Walmart.
Like that.
So anyway, so I bought the overpriced Dramamine and I took it, and then the nice lady proceeded to take me back to my family where I didn't feel disgusting
Ride
anymore.
the teacups.
Yeah, well, and after the Dramamine, I was fine. So just keep in mind that when you use medications like that, you can get a little, actually technically it's not medication, it's like a natural thing, I believe. But just keep in mind, if you use it, you may become drowsy. So I would recommend that if you even have an idea of motion sickness, that you have it on hand when you do your training. Not for kiting, not for towing if you do winch tows, which we will have some pictures and video of that as well. The winch tow is really cool. They pretty much like set up this machine and they hook it to you to where your hook points are, and you kite your wing up, which is basically launching it. You make a wall and then it shoots up past this point where it's like, you know, I'm not gonna pull you across the yard, and then it goes up here and it just flies. At which point it's very tame and docile, and you can control it with the brake toggles or by grabbing some different lines, A, B, C, D lines in my case. And you can control this thing in the air, and it's very strange because it's huge. For me, it's 31 meters squared because of my weight, which is about 285 dressed to fly, plus the pack, which is, I believe it's like 65 pounds. So don't get bent out of shape. If you think you're too heavy to do paragliding, you probably aren't. Just keep in mind, there are limits for the FAR 103, which is 254 pounds before life-saving measures like reserve chutes. You do not have to add that in. If you had a fire extinguisher, you wouldn't have to add that in. which I don't think people usually carry fire extinguishers. What was the other big thing that people carry? Oh, flotation devices. So if you hit water, you can have an auto flotation device that will like inflate and keep your head above water. But when you're flying over water, they teach you to actually unbuckle everything but maybe your chest. And then you're just sitting in a chair at that point, so you have very limited risk. But if you would have an engine out and you have to go into the water, you can then get away from your rig and not get killed. So lots of different ways you can get killed in aviation. Let's just be real. But most people don't talk about it because I don't know if it's just like faux pas to talk about, you know, losing your life doing what you love. But let's get real, guys. If you fly on this thing that's not a parachute, it's called a wing, and you have a 2-stroke engine on your back, 25 horsepower, and you know, you just go up and go in a circle and then land, you could still technically get killed doing it, but it's very uncommon. Where people get injured is when they start doing crazy aerobatics or they make bad mistakes as a trainee, hence guys like me. So you need to be careful, because if you deflate the wing, you can have an asymmetric deflation where the wing basically becomes not a wing, it becomes a death trap. And that's what you want to avoid. So that's where your reserve chute would come in. And even with the reserve chute, you can, what do they call that thing? Where they go out opposite one another and they just like run you into the ground.
Yeah.
So there are risks associated with everything in the hobby, but you need to just kind of balance that and say, can I tolerate that? Flying radio controlled airplanes is super fun. It is extremely fulfilling. It is not easy. It is not free. It's certainly not free. It's not as expensive as it used to be. And it's more approachable than it's ever been. By the way, if you guys are hearing noise, we have a huge storm going through right now.
Insanely windy.
And when we go out in the garage, you're gonna hear the garage doors are moving. It's like nuts right now. So you would not be flying in that. That's the other thing you have to think about when you get into doing PPG, is that you have to be able to do a little bit of weather on your own, or you can listen to weather forecasts, or you can call the weather brief hotline. And you have to pay attention to winds up there, not just down here. I mean, you can fly legally in some environments up to just under 18,000 feet. So, which would be crazy, by the way, and you would need oxygen, I believe, around 12,000 feet, most people do, and that's above sea level. We're only at about 1,000 feet here in Iowa. So if we fly here, we've got kind of a really easy area. The air is thick enough to breathe and not have headaches and things like that. But if you go out to Colorado or Utah or something like that, where you're in the mountains, you have to really consider those things. Or if you're flying on the coasts where you're at basically sea level, it just changes the density of air. So you have to start doing some research. There's a lot of training that you're gonna go over in PPG training. So it was, for me, it was 5 straight days. And we had like a 2-hour lunch break, which I thought was strange. And I went to a place called Discover PPG, and they have a website called Fly PPG. So no, it was not sponsored. I paid 100% for everything. I got 0 discount, which was kind of disappointing. But the people were really good to me, and I felt like the training was worth every single penny. And I mean, I'm talking every penny that I paid them, they earned just by dealing with me. So anyway, I have my harness in here. This is a bag that came with, this is called a tuck sack, or a stuff sack rather, for the wing, okay? So that says Adventure Paramotors. And this is my kiting harness. So the one that you guys see in a few minutes, you'll see that. And of course, I'm gonna call things by the wrong name because I'm still learning in that video. But I wanted to preface all of this by just saying, as you watch me go through this process, I'm not even trying to train you guys necessarily. I'm just trying to help teach you the big picture so that you can make some decisions. I got a real simple helmet. This is like a bicycle or like a BMX helmet. And this one's gonna work fine. It's got a chin strap. You do need a chin strap. I didn't like that this was not symmetrical here and here, but this is like a $35 helmet. And you'll note that you probably can't get hearing protection like an over-ear hearing protection, which is what we typically use in PPG. When you get power involved, it's 25 horsepower engine in my case, 185 cc. I got a Vitarazi 185. It's a Moster 185, and it was a Plus, right?
Yep.
So for what it's worth, I don't know what that really means. I know it has a muffler and a silencer on it. I know I have dual electric start, which means I can pull, or I can actually move it over to here. I can have a pull start, but my throttle's in my right hand, and I have brake toggles, but this is like attached to my hand while I'm flying, the throttle is. It has an electric start and a stop, a kill switch, and then there's a master switch and a LiPo. Happens to be a 4S 2200 lipo, which I thought was crazy because I've got tons of them. So this bag also came with it, and basically they teach you how to break it down. And to be honest, the Paramotor itself can be broke down to about this big right here. And it's a little bit awkward and a little bit heavy, but you can actually, you know, if you put your travel cap on there, you can put it in your car. I mean, it's small. You can put it in a car trunk, no problem. You could probably put it in the back seat of your car if you wanted as well. So there's a lot of different ways. If you have a hitch adapter, I got a 2-inch hitch adapter fixture that I'm gonna use to quickly adapt to, say, the back of my truck or the back of our Traverse, and then I can just drive across the way to our other land here and not have to hoof it across there. Now I can just pick stuff up and walk with it. It's really not that bad. I was concerned, and by the way, this is an actual backpack, as is my larger stuff sack. And a stuff sack is when you're done with the wing, you put it on top and you just kind of just start pulling it in, and eventually you put it in there and it's in there, which is really nice. But they set it up so that everything can be easily packed. So I have 2 backpacks like this, and then of course I have the Paramotor. And the Paramotor's out there, we're gonna show you that next. But the rationale behind this introduction video, of course it's a short intro, is to give you an idea of now, after having had some training, how I'm going to logistically accomplish flying. Because that's a big part of this hobby that nobody really talks about. Or you might hear tidbits, but I want you guys to hear it from me, what I'm planning on doing and how it's gonna work. For me, I have a contact that's about 25 minutes from where we live, and he and I will work together, I'm hoping, to fly, and I'll just have him watch over me because I've only flown 9 times solo. And that's with a bug in my ear. I've got them on the radio, which you guys will hear that in the video toward the end of this video. And if you wanna skip ahead, that's fine, but you'll see me doing forward launches, reverse launches, wench launches, forward and reverse, and then you're gonna see a handful of flights. What you won't see is me in the air being scared to death on my first flight. Now, I was with 2 other guys that day, and the 2 other guys did not have the same experience. They had much better experiences. I had a legitimate issue with my throttle, which contributed to, but did not cause, about 7 issues that I came up with. After I was done with that flight, I was this close to quitting. Having spent like $17,000, I was this close to walking away from all of it because I was that scared. Yeah. It was, and you can call me names or make fun of me all you want, because honestly, I would have been making fun of me. But the thing is, when you have 4 kids, you've got a wife that loves you, and you've got, you know, people depending on you, you want to protect that, and you have to think about it logically. Well, at the same time, that's also what kept me going, is that I had people that were supporting me in my decision to continue. Because after having sorted through the fear factor, which is real, and it wasn't because I looked down and it was a long ways down because it's hundreds of feet down, or the fact that you've got a motor right next to your head, or the fact that, you know, like things can go wrong. Those were not ever my fear. My fear was the fact that I realized I'm fully in control and I'm doing a bad job, and I am inducing myself to be sick. I'm having trouble. I killed the engine a couple of times by hitting the kill switch because I didn't properly have the throttle attached to my hand. That wasn't the trainer's fault either. That was just sort of like a comfort issue. And I wish I would have gotten a little bit better guidance on that, but I didn't persist. So you have to remember, when you're doing this, just keep asking the questions until you're totally comfortable. And they gave me every opportunity. So none of what I say, I don't want you guys to take this the wrong way against my instructors. But my real experience was, I was so scared after my first flight. I've never wanted to be on the ground more in my life than that moment. And most people are like, my first flight was the best flight ever. It was like orgasmically good. That was not my experience. It was the opposite of that experience. So for most people to get into PPG, I believe that the vast majority of people do not have that bad experience on their first flight. But less than 22 hours later, I made 8 successful flights. That day, I got up at 6, was ready at 7. I was at the station. There was fog so thick you couldn't hardly see the front of your car. By 11, the fog had blown out, the winds picked up, and the winds aloft had us grounded. There was a 50-50 shot that at 3 p.m. when we came back and reconvened, I would be able to fly or I would have quit. Now, I'm telling you this, I'm being very candid with you, because when you are an adult, you have to make adult decisions. And sometimes the adult decision is to quit something that's dangerous, that you legitimately fear for your safety or your well-being. And I think that I realized in thinking through it with my wife and my dad, who's a pilot, I said, he's not a pilot. He has his pilot's license. He's not a professional pilot. So just to be clear, he and I came to the conclusion that I hadn't actually done what I was doing. I had been afraid because I performed so poorly, but my equipment did not let me down. I did not die. I did not crash. And then I had to go back in time and say, what did happen? I oscillated this way and that way because of the throttle, which, by the way, when you pull the throttle hard, you push forward. When you let go, you swing back like a kid swing, except more because you're further away from the swing point. And when you go left and you go right, you swing more than a kid swing. So not knowing that I'd be sick to my stomach, that made a big impact. So if I would have taken this drug at the beginning, that would have mitigated that to non-issue, okay? That was the first issue. The second issue, of course, was the oscillations, which you can learn to not do that. It just takes some practice, okay? You don't have to have that bad experience. So that was like 4 issues of my 7. Then the throttle issue was an issue. I had a zip tie that was around the spring, holding it onto the starter in the middle. Now that meant that my throttle worked, but there was like a dead point in the grab, okay? Which I don't. Also, I had the throttle not secured to my hand in an appropriate fashion. Now it was secured, I never lost it, but I ran into the brake toggle 3 times in my climb out, which killed the engine. That was extremely scary. So what I can implore you is don't overthink things, but do think them. Like do seriously go through. And what happens is when you are first doing your launch, you blow launches like over and over again. If you're like me, you overthink things, you get out of order, you get really ahead of yourself. And I am a classic overthinker. And with them talking to me in my ear, the one training issue that I had the biggest problem with was left, right. You'll notice I just did that backward. Also, turn left. Okay, I just did that wrong. Turn left. I had trouble with that as a kid, and I had trouble with it in training, like crazy. Just turning left or right, I get confused. Which is weird because I fly these radio-controlled airplanes upside down, inside out, and I don't think about it. As soon as I start thinking about it, I get inside my head and I can't hardly do it. It's so weird. So that was one of my biggest issues. So between all these different issues, I said I listed them out. I wrote down 7 issues. And I said, what am I going to do to resolve each and every one of those? And I said, if I take my second flight and I get 5 of them right, and I'm left with 2 terrible, that's gonna be a night and day difference, and it was. But I got all 7 of them corrected on my second flight. I'm not talking about my 17th flight or my 200th flight. It was on flight number 2. So I wanna implore you guys that are getting into PPG, first of all, give yourself a little bit of slack. If you make it back alive and you didn't destroy your equipment, and even if you did, you know, if you make it back alive, you didn't do everything wrong. You did a few things wrong, probably, like I did. But I had to think about it like this. I made it back in one piece. The landing was a breeze. The landing, I didn't have a problem. I think I had one landing where I tipped over a little bit, which isn't on video. She missed that particular landing. My trainer was filming. But if you make it back in one piece, just do your very best if you're not feeling ill, like I was, to get back in the air. You will be able to identify and act upon concerns. Now, weird thing I thought was that my trainer wasn't riding my butt to get me to do that. I came up with that on my own fruition because I didn't want to quit, but I was inclined to protect my family. And I was also being a chicken at the time. So, if you get in a situation where you're scared, figure out if the fear is valid or if the fear is an emotional response. Mine was an emotional response and it was partially valid. Very, like maybe 10% valid. 90% was fear, was just emotional. So once I figured that out, then I addressed the fear. And once you address the fear, it's much easier to overcome. So of the 7 issues, I dealt with 0 of them on my second flight, third flight, fourth flight, fifth flight, sixth flight, seventh flight, 8th flight. The second day, which would have been, then I went to the 9th flight and then we had used up the whole day. It was like pretty much dark. Mm-hmm. So we can fly within half an hour of sundown. So in closing to the intro, I just want you guys to know, I want to encourage you that if you get into PPG, it is not easy, It is not cheap. It is certainly not free. If you get used gear, plan on having problems. Budget for new stuff. It's life or death. Just get new stuff, okay? Get new stuff, and when you become more skilled as a pilot, then you can go back and change to used things, okay? Do yourself a favor, get new stuff. Do what it takes, borrow the money, you know, do what it takes, just get new stuff. If you get something that's got 100 hours on it, it's been used a lot. Find out why the person quit. They might be getting out because they were scared. They might be getting out because they got the wrong equipment. They might be wrong sizes. Used equipment is a tough thing in this sport because it is sized to your body. Sorry, I'm hitting the mic. And it is sized to your body. Because my trainer was using a 90cc engine and that was big on her. I'm using a 185cc engine. Big difference. Actually, hers was rated at like 23 horsepower, I think, which is crazy. I don't know how that can be. But, or maybe it wasn't 23, maybe it was like 17. Either way, the point is she was like half my size. So, but she could handle my wing and my paramotor better than I could. And I'm like probably 125 pounds heavier than her. So the reality is there is a ton to cover in a short time. And that was supposed to be a 7-day course. We did it in 5 days in bad weather during December. And we had, on the 5th day, I lucked out. Had we not had a clearing at 3 p.m. and I was flying at 3 p.m., I probably would have been selling all this stuff because I would have given up, I would have quit without having some reassurances. Or there's a high probability that that would have happened. I can't say that for certain because that's not what happened. But what did happen is I talked to my dad, I talked to my wife, and they both reassured me that what I was feeling was an emotional response and it wasn't a practical and logical response.
And I think you are your own worst critic, and you already said you're an overthinker.
Oh yeah.
And you're just hard on yourself, and you expected it to be easy, which you said from the very beginning. The first day you're like, this is way harder, you know, just physically and demanding and stuff than you thought.
I thought it would be like flying a kite because I can fly those kites.
And you said to me that day after you had your bad flight, you said, how can I want to do something so bad and be so bad at it?
Yeah.
And I said, but you've literally never done it before. And I said, it's the same thing. You know, I watch you fly radio controlled airplanes for hours and hours and hours and hours, but that doesn't mean I can do it. You know, you have to get out there and do it and practice. And your first flight wasn't really a flight. It was
an exercise. It was an example of what not to do.
Yeah.
But it is unfortunate that you taint the image of, you know, your whole feelings about it. My second flight, I was scared to death to do it, but I did it anyway. And I overcame the fear, and you can tell because the trainers are really excited that I got it. And honestly, from a perspective of a training company, I just want to say, first of all, kudos to Discover PPG. They have a really nice setup. They have a hangar set up, and Mike Mixer, I'm not doing this as a shout out. They're not paying me. I'm not getting a cent from these guys. In fact, I kind of wish I was. But the thing is, if you guys want good training and you're in mid-continental USA, they're a great place. I interviewed, I called 6 companies. First one turned out to be a terrible choice, but might be a great fit for somebody else. If I would have gone there, we probably would have killed each other. Okay, so I'm glad we didn't do that. Second choice was too far. It was in Florida. And the guy was really, he gave me the time of day. He was encouraging. He was not a BSer, and I appreciated that. The third one was in Indiana, which is a little bit further for us. It would have been a 6.5 hour drive. I was seriously ready to pull the trigger with these guys. But then when I found out there was somebody closer that gave me good vibes and also came recommended from a human connection who sent their kid, a 14-year-old son, to fly and train with these guys, that was kind of like the deal maker for me. There was also a man in Minnesota. He was 6.5 hours away too. I was so close to pulling the trigger with him. And then there was a guy in Omaha, and Omaha guy was super busy, and I could tell he was busy. And I was like, I am not going to fit with this guy because my schedule's too crazy. The guy was super nice, really helpful, but I just wasn't getting the vibe. And that's the thing. It's not like a personal attack when you don't get along with people. Don't make it about that. Make it about who do you get along with? Who do you think is going to give you the best value for your money? And they're all about the same. They're basically $2,000 to $3,000 for training. Some of them give you a discount if you buy stuff from them. Some of them will train you on other gear. These guys will train you on what you have, provided it is a reputable company that has a good safety record, okay? Even the ones they're not crazy about, like Fresh Breeze. So Excuse me. So at the end of the day, Discover PPG did a great job. They got me up there, and I'm telling you, when you first start and you realize just how far you got to come to be in the air flying, you realize very quickly how important training is. And if you're not used to like rigging knots and you know, like climbing equipment, or maybe come from a background of doing like water skiing or snowboarding, or you know, like a really balance oriented sport, or you don't already have parachuting experience, which a lot of guys like. One of my peers that was training, Dan, he had done parachuting, and he had done this in Bali. He had flown on a paraglider, not a powered paraglider. And so he had some experience with it. And he had some other aviation. He's also a full-scale pilot. So he took to it really well. And he was a lot less, I don't want to say schizophrenic like I was, but I was definitely more skittish than he was. I was more scared. And then there was another man named Dave, and I'm not using last names on purpose because I didn't ask him about sharing this, but Dave was super positive, really encouraging guy. And he was another one of the guys that really kind of helped me say, listen, it's gonna be better. And he was super positive, and that was really appreciated in the moment. So when you go to the training, I thought it was gonna be great because I was like alone, and it was gonna be just like, I'd get all that time with the instructor, I could ask a million questions, and that really did help a little bit. But I think the encouragement of going with the group, December's a slow time for the trainers. You know, December, now we're January of 2022, and it's gonna be like dead for a while because it's just the weather's terrible. But I misjudged that as well. I was wrong on so many different things. But having those people show up at first was kind of like, man, I kind of need the time to get done in this short time frame. But it turned out it was great. I watched Dan do his solo, and he had a hard time getting into a seat. He's a big guy like me, and he had coveralls on, and that made it almost impossible for him to slide into a seat. When you don't get in your seat, it is scary because you feel like you're gonna fall even though you know you're not, and you are strapped in still, and you're held up totally fine. You got like 6 contact points. But it is not fun, and it is draining. It is draining. You feel so tired by the time you get back. So I learned a lot from watching him. And then Dave, he came out, and he ended up he had a $500 mistake where one of his landings, he hit the prop on the ground and blew it up and then killed the frame. So that was $500 down the drain. So when you go to training, if you blow up your own gear, you're gonna have to replace it. Fortunately, these guys have all the stuff you need if you do have an accident like that. And it does happen. So they said they haven't had a lot of them lately, which is great, but it is a reality. You need to plan on it. $400 for a prop, about $100 for a ring, which holds your netting. So, but everybody lived. It's not like anybody died, you know, just you come down and have a landing, and you know, hit the prop on the ground, boom, it's done. It's in the garbage can. Unless you chip it, and then you can fix it with epoxy. Man, this intro is getting long. I'm sorry, guys. There is so much to say about this, but the reality is when you decide to get into PPG, there is a lot to consider. And by the way, I haven't even talked about sizing. I haven't talked about the motor sizing. And you know why? Because everybody is different. Find the person you trust, and then just say, hey, I don't really care if you're making high margins on me. I don't care. I want to buy what you recommend, because if you trust them to train you, you better be willing to give them some money for the equipment that they sold you. And if you can't tolerate that, and you must use used gear, or maybe you've got something that you bought from years ago and you were too chicken to finish the training, kind of like what would happen to me, you can take it, but you got to call them and ask them, hey, are you confident with what I got? Because if it's not sized right, that could have been a big part of your problem. Or if you've got a trike and you didn't need a trike, or you don't want a trike and you wanted to just foot launch, everybody I talked to at first said I needed a trike because I'm too big. They were wrong. I foot launch, have no problem with it. A trike will be a nice tool for me when I get an injury and I can't run as easy. And I said I want to foot launch because I feel like it gives me the most control over my launch, and it gives me the tightest landing area. We have lots of land here, and I still want that. So I would encourage you, if you're healthy enough to foot launch, learn to foot launch. It is a little bit more challenging, I believe, but it's also better in some ways, in my opinion. So also there's some advantages to doing trike launches, and especially if you need it, trike or quad, you can have 4 wheels or 3. And there's a little bit more crumple zone in case you have an accident or you have a really botched landing. There's a little bit more to break around you. So lots to consider, guys. And when you start looking at this, you will be overwhelmed. So the first thing you should do is start figuring out where you are in proximity to the training companies, and then who you're gonna be flying with. Get in contact with them. See if they'll let you hang out with them for, like any time they're flying, and just go and watch and learn. You will learn more in one day or one afternoon of just hanging out with the crew. Call these guys up at Discover PPG. Call them up and say, hey, Mike, can I come out and just hang out with you for the afternoon while you do your training and just watch over the shoulders? I'm guessing they would let you do that. I don't know if they're gonna charge you, so you need to talk to Mike and find out. But I know the guy in Omaha told me that you could do that. I didn't end up going with him. He was actually the closest of all of them. But I just felt like maybe it wasn't gonna be a great fit. So be a great fit for you maybe, I don't know. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth or make up your mind for you. Excuse me. So at the end of the day, when you get ready to do this, there are a million unanswered questions. And if you're an overthinker like I am, you're gonna need to answer a lot of them before you can get in the air. And do not think you're gonna buy the gear and do it without training. You won't. No. You're gonna get it and you're gonna be like, wow, I don't even know what way to hold this. Kind of like we do in our video coming up. So let's go out and look at the Paramotor real quick. I'm gonna just carry this out because I want you guys to see the practicality of this. I own an airplane, believe it or not, because I got an airplane from a man, I believe he passed away, and he was a retired Air Force colonel. And I have an airplane, and my dad is paying to store it in a storage unit. And I've seen it one time when we picked it up. And that's just how impractical it is to have an airplane without a hangar on your site. So this is an aircraft that I can legally fly. If it wasn't a blizzard out there and it wasn't dark, I could go out and legally fly this safely, okay? And it's in my garage, and I'm gonna show you just how small it is right now. So just take a trip with me to my garage. The reason that we're showing you this is because when you wanna get into this yourself, now you may not have as big a garage, you may have a bigger garage, whatever. You hear the noise? That's so crazy, that's how windy it is. So walking out to the garage, you can see how much room I've dedicated to this. I did leave a light on just so it was easy for filming. Show the people the door, that is just nuts. See that door moving, guys? Yeah. The wind is just coming straight at it. So, this is my wing, so I can pull this thing down. There it is. Yes, you can squish that thing down. This is very light, it weighs about, I don't know, maybe 10 pounds, 11 pounds if that. And I've got straps on the back, just like a backpack, okay? So it's very simple. So, in order to get that out, and if you look inside of here, there it is, guys. So it's just very simple, and then the risers, which are like all the controls and the wire, or not the wires, but the strings, they're in a bag right here, okay? So I can get that out easily. And there are some people that are gonna say, don't store it that way, you need to fold it properly. I disagree, and we're not gonna agree, so that's fine. Prove me wrong in 10 years. But this is the storage technique. Boom, on the dining room table. Yes, that is our old dining room table. So I have fuel, I have oil, and then I have this thing. So this can literally store on the ground, under it, or it can go up above. I put that up there so that if the mice were to get into it, they won't get into it as easy, okay? Because I gotta go way up a wall. Mice will get up there if they want up there, but we have cats for a reason. This is my Paramotor. This is the 25 horsepower engine. I've already torqued the bolts on the head. I gotta do that again in like 9 more hours. This is the prop, it's 1.3 meters. It is carbon fiber. There's a master switch here, there's a LiPo here. There's a little 2200 4S right here in a LiPo safe bag. You'll note the gas tank is empty right now. This is the oil I'm using. I'm gonna do a 40-to-1 mix, Dominator. That's what they recommended. I just pretty much did whatever they recommended. If they're wrong, then they are wrong for an entire career of making people successful in this. So there's times when you don't know, so you just listen to the people that know. Okay, got a fuel tank. This is not really a fuel tank, just so you guys know. It's just works really good for this, and I'm gonna get probably get a pump just to make it easier. And then I have this frame. It just happens to be hung on the wall because we hung this thing down here, and so I happen to have screws in the wall already. So this comes off the wall super easy. It's got a couple of pins. This pin goes here, and then this thing holds the Paramotor on the back of a truck on a 2-inch ball hitch. I bought this. This was not included with it, and I think he wanted like 200 bucks for this. And I'm like, that's a lot of steel and work and labor to put this thing together for 200 bucks. I thought it was a pretty good value. And yes, that's all part of the expense that I was talking about earlier, that like $16,000, $17,000. And then there's also a spot right here for that jug, and you put a bungee around it to hold it on. And so you have your bungee that holds this, you have that. I happen to have oil already in here so I can mix more fuel. I have one single clamp that holds this in place. And this was the extra feature that I purchased, if you want to show them from over here. That's right here, this thing. And that's on the bottom. That is an invaluable tool for a beginner. It keeps the prop from hitting the ground if you slam onto the ground during a landing. It is overpriced in my opinion. That was 160 bucks. I feel like that was not a good value, but it is what it is. And I did buy it, and I'm happy I bought it because I did have one where I kind of landed and slid. I don't think it stopped any damage. This is the throttle that I had trouble with. This is a throttle linkage. So show them right here. That's where that zip tie was on that spring, and it was slowing down the movement, okay? So this is what I found out. There's a tachometer on there with an hour meter. There's a cruise control on this thing, okay? So it's similar to like a tractor. This is what I figured out I could do. And I found this out on my own. Nobody told me this. I had to figure it out on my own, which was a little bit frustrating. Okay, now I'm gonna cinch it down. And you see what happens? Once you cinch that down, this thing, because you're holding your brake toggles on the wing, and then this stays in the orientation that you're in. So no matter what direction I go, it stays with me. I don't want to accidentally yank this off. That's why I put that clamp on there. So this is throttle. I found that it was easier to kind of, they were recommending holding a brake toggle like this and then using, and you always have gloves on. So it's like, I mean, warm weather gloves. This is the stop, the kill. And you have to hold that for a few seconds, just like any kill switch on, you know, like a moped or a lawnmower or something like that. Then this starts it. So if it were engaged, it would start cranking. So I could plug in my little Dean's connector here. Yes, believe it or not, there's a Dean's connector on this battery. You plug it in, and yes, that's a regular LiPo, and yes, that is what Vitarazi has in the manual. So it is all by spec. I thought maybe the guys at Discover put that together. No, that's just what they send from Vitarazi. Okay, so then when you're done, you take this off, or in flight, you can actually, I'm thinking about the possibility of maybe setting the cruise. This is a magnet, by the way, here. So that magnet gives you a way to stow this. This strap would be right there, okay? So that holds on. And so remember, this is the harness, so it's very comfortable. It's got all this squishy stuff in there. That's like a piece of foam in there. You can undo this and let it fall forward, but I don't actually have a reason to undo that. You're still strapped in at different spots, but it's crazy the amount of adjustability on all this crap. It's just insane. Then these are the carabiners that actually hold you up. So you spin them, and then that allows you to get in and out. And this is a little bit different than the harness that we used for kiting, okay? So they're super, super heavy duty, and these things are rated for, I believe, 20 kilonewtons this way and 7 kilonewtons that way. That is an incredible amount of power, okay? This is what you sit on. So it's like a chair. It's a very comfortable chair. And then once the wing lifts up, then this whole thing goes up like that, and it lifts up your butt, okay? Now, that is also tied to your legs through these leg straps, okay? This goes through the middle, and then this comes down from top, okay? And it attaches to your legs. And so when you're running along, you look kind of like a dork because you've got a board attached to your lower leg, your upper thigh, okay? And so you're running along, and then once you get ready to launch, when that wing starts picking up, then it actually pulls that seat, but it only gets about halfway down your butt, so you have to squish your way up. And it is awkward because you don't have anything to brace against up in the air. So skinnier people have some advantages over heavier people. I'm just gonna tell you that if you're heavier. Like I said, 285, I'm not small. So, you know, some of you are gonna be like, you don't look like you're 285, and some of you are gonna be like, you look like you're 285. So whatever, I don't care. I like cheeseburgers. So at the end of the day, this thing is ready to fly. It's also set up for a speed brake. That's what this pulley is for. And then there's another pulley on the actual, there's a set of pulleys on my risers. So this is the cage. Do you guys hear that? Sounds like a guitar. Okay, the carbon fiber. This is the start. If you need to start mechanically without using the electric starter. So there's a backup and redundancy for that. And then also we've got the transport cap on here. So this is where the fuel goes in. It's a small spout, that's why we have that weird gas can, okay? There's a fuel filter here, and then it primes way up to the top, this air box. It kind of blocks access to it, but it comes off fairly easy. And then this shroud helps to get air in and onto the motor so it can cool itself. That's actually a silencer, not a muffler. There's a muffler in series and then a silencer. And that silencer has to repacked at 100 hours. So this is, I don't want to say there's anything magical about this particular setup. It's what they recommended. It's what the trainer recommended. And it's what I bought. And if I would have bought a different one, then I would have been fine with it. I didn't care. I don't know to care. And the other thing too is, like, really at the end of the day, Vitarazi is one of the main motors that's going to be offered, and the Vitarazi 185 is extremely popular. And so the way I figure is, if it's extremely popular amongst a lot of the different brands, it's probably where I want to start, okay? If I decide to go to something like more crazy later on or more sophisticated, that's fine. But this is pretty much the same motor they're using on a lot of these cages. So basically this is the motorized part, okay? It's a backpack. So I could pick that up. I'm not gonna pick it up because I don't wanna walk into something. You'll see it in a video here shortly. And then also this is for anti-torquing. So you see this? You're gonna have to come over here. See how this moves around? You can add bearings, you can add a plate in there to keep that from moving around. But then over here, this one doesn't, okay? And that has to do with, you can add that to both sides if you want, or you can take this out of both sides, and that'll allow for more weight shift. So when you move your body, you can have everything actually tip and move, similar to what you get from brake output. So there is a lot going on this machine, and this is the very simple part. Then you start getting into actually opening up the wing and seeing how the toggles work, seeing how the brake lines work, how to not tangle stuff, how to lay things out for a reverse launch, how to grab the A's. The A's are the leading edge. That's kind of like a bridle for a horse. You tell it to go up, it goes up. You know, you can grab the D's or the C's, and you can collapse the whole wing, and you can make it like suck up like a ball. It's crazy. So much you can see here. This is a war wound. This is another war wound. Basically, it's just mud because I have dragged on the ground a little bit. So I'm not afraid of being inexperienced and new. So very, very happy with the equipment. I've got nothing but good to say about this. This thing will blow me on my butt if I decided to give it full throttle. I can barely lean into it enough to stop it. The trainer, on the other hand, Teresa, who's like half my size, she can give it full throttle and lean against it, which is just amazing to me. Because if I go full throttle, I'm getting pushed down the road. This thing is incredibly powerful. And so my weight is not a big issue. If you're heavier, you just climb out a little bit less steep. So it just takes a little bit longer. So you do need to be mindful of that. Also, you can see where they hooked me in. I had good angles. If you want to show them from here, please. See that? You can hook here or here. On some of the more advanced ones, there's 3 hook points. Mine just has 2. That's fine. I don't care. Once you're hooked in, you've got it right. You don't need to mess with it. So I'm super, super happy with the simplicity of this. And look how much square footage I used. This is basically the size of a closet in your, well, yeah, that would be a kind of a deeper closet, but still, you could pretty much put this in a closet in your house. And yes, you can walk through a doorway with it, but it is tough when you're thick like me. That thing goes through a doorway, and you can break this all down. You take this off, it basically slacks, and then all these things pull out here, 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 and that whole cage comes apart. It's probably a 10-minute process, and then you can take off the prop and have that in that bag, and then you see how big it is. It's this big, it's very small. And then you can actually take the harness off, but most people don't take the harness off. It does also drop back, so it becomes less deep. So we had that in the Traverse, no problem. We had tons, I had like a cooler, I had tons of cold weather gear, I had a big luggage bag because I had lots of extra clothes because I didn't know what I was gonna need with the cold. So that's awesome. This thing is gonna be really nice. It's gonna make it super easy. It obviously stows on the wall nicely, but I could stow it right in the same spot. If this was in, you know, like an apartment garage or whatever, you can actually have an aircraft in your garage. And that's the whole point of showing you this, is just the reality of having an aircraft in my garage right now is here, which is super cool. It's the culmination of many, many years of hard work. And you wouldn't have to spend many years of hard work to get here, but I did, because I had other things in my life going on, like having 4 kids and being married and having a full-time gig and then having a part-time gig, or whatever you want to call this full-time experience on YouTube. So for you, it might be a different experience, but I just want to share what our experience has been that's gotten us from where we were to where we want to be, which is me flying. And when I say we, I mean she doesn't really want me to probably fly, but she supports me and lets me do that, which is good. She's kind of grimacing a little bit when... She's giving the indifferent look. She's okay with me doing it and she's supportive of it, but it's not like she wants me to fly necessarily. It's just she allows me to fly.
I'm not gonna fly.
Yeah, she doesn't want to fly. I wish she would, because that would be, if you want to talk about an awesome, cool thing to share with your spouse, because on like flight 3 or 4, when I was starting to like realize, wow, I'm not gonna get killed doing this. And it's awesome. You get up there and, you know, say you're 700-800 feet up, which is still relatively low. And I'm just cruising along and I'm thinking, this is freaking cool. This is cool. I'm in a lawn chair, comfortable, lounging. And I mean, it's not like you're uncomfortable in any way. Once you're in this thing, you are super comfortable. Kiting harness, not so much. And you're sitting there looking down, and I'm looking over here at Quincy, Illinois, which is, you know, it's not a huge town, 40,000 people, let's call it. And it's just absolutely gorgeous sunset. And there's like fog over the community for some reason. I don't know what was going on. I think it was just fog, because it was foggy earlier in the day. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. And you're sitting there and you're commanding where you go. So it's not like you have to ask for permission or whatever. I mean, there's airspaces and all that stuff, so you have to be careful to stay in G airspace or E airspace. And if you need to go into B, C, or A, you're not gonna get taller. You're not gonna get, A is 18,000 and up. You're not gonna get into a B airspace, don't even try. But if you do try and the tower clears you, you can do it, but they're not gonna clear it. C airspace, which is like, you know, regional airports, you can actually get clearance to do that. D airspace, which is a little bit less common to have issues with. They're pretty, you know, lenient, and they'll work with you, especially if they know that you're in the area. The important part is to talk to the tower of that. There may not even be a tower though, so you have to figure out who's in charge, talk to the FBO or whatever, and just get with them, figure out if you can work out an arrangement, what type of rules they want you to follow for that area. And the big thing is, finding a launch site and all that is sometimes a bit of a challenge, just like flying radio-controlled airplanes. It can be a challenge. So, but the thing is, there's actually less regulation of this than there is of flying radio-controlled airplanes, which is completely ludicrous. Sorry, it is stupid. So, that's the experience in a nutshell. We're gonna watch unboxing that thing next. And then we're gonna have a very, very brief, like, you know, brief as I can make it, clip that's gonna be talking about the flight experiences we're gonna share right after this thing gets opened up. So please forgive me. I don't know a lot about a lot of the names and where things hook up and all that stuff, but when we were filming this. But now I know how to put that thing on and fly it legally and safely, which is crazy. And that was a 7-day window, one of which we did nothing on it, because the weather was bad, and I was like packing to go. So 6 days, I went from nothing to flying safely, flying safely. So that is incredible and cool. And kudos to Discover PPG, which is Fly PPG on their website. And kudos to Mike, and also a special thanks to Teresa for putting up with me, and Mike's daughter, Maddie also helped me for one afternoon or whatever. So thanks, Maddie, in case you're watching this video. Good Lord, if you watch this whole video, you must be bored. So thank you guys for helping me get in the air. It is really cool that I can do that now. And I wouldn't have been able to do it. And notwithstanding the fact that it costs money, it really doesn't matter if it was $1 million or free. You guys helped it happen in real life, real time and space. And that's cool because you guys did that for me. So we appreciate it. Anyway, all right, so we're gonna wrap this up. This 5-minute clip, that's an hour long, right?
Yep.
Of course. All right, guys, stay tuned, more coming. And by the way, leave your questions in the comments. I probably won't know the answers. This is not my area of expertise, but I know enough not to kill myself and fly. So leave your questions in the comments below, and I will try my best to answer them. Also, the flights and stuff are at the end, and yes, we do show flights. We don't show the whole flight, we show takeoffs and landings, because once you're out and away, there's not much to see from the ground perspective. It's very small and a long ways away. So if you're mid-continental and you want a place that's a good trainer, Mike Mixer will take care of you. So stay tuned.